Good evening, everyone. Really, thank you so much for coming here tonight. I know you could have been at a lot of different places, but you're here, and this is an important time in our city. Just want to give a shout out to Congressman Scott. Sir, thank you for coming. And I think we have Delegate Simons, Councilman Brown from Hampton. Just please stand up. Yep. And when you look across the room, unhoused individuals, this is a regional issue, and that's why we have federal, state, and local partners here. Earlier this month, I actually participated in a podcast with Politico about the rise of veterans that are unhoused and homeless. We went through all of the data for Newport News, and we looked at where we stand in our point in time data. What we've seen over the last year is about a 65% increase in individuals that are unhoused, from about 185 to over 300 this year. And as mayor and as city council, that's completely unacceptable. While our team at Four Oaks, they do an amazing job and they provide comprehensive services, we as a community can always do more. And that's why we're here today. We look forward to hearing what additional solutions that you have to offer. Our panelists will help guide our conversation, answer your questions, and provide insights as subject matter experts in the field. Our moderator tonight is Regina Brayboy, Senior Fellow and Head of the Healthcare Forum of the Human Capital Center with the Conference Board. Regina will help steer our discussion and keep us on topic. I wanted to talk first to the crowd because we received a lot of emails and phone calls. We didn't know how large the crowd was going to be. And so I'm here to say we look forward to engaging with you in a respectful manner. This is a nationwide issue, but we're here to provide local solutions. So to be respectful of everyone's time and people that are up here. And most important, there's one person that I want to thank the most, and that's Councilman Cleon Long. This is a passion. Yeah, we can clap for Cleon. This is a passion project for Councilman Long. Thank you so much for putting this together so that we can all receive input on issues related to homelessness in Newport News from our residents. Cleon, over to you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you again for everyone to come out tonight. The purpose of this event is for us as a community to actually talk about solutions or how we want to address the homeless population here in Newport News. This came about because we had a lot of concerns or complaints of people that lived around Four Oaks Center that talked about the patrons that utilized Four Oaks Center after the operation was closed down for the night, that some of these patrons would leave trash in their encampments around that center, and that they were concerned about their place of living that was near Four Oaks Center. And then most recently, we had a nonprofit organization that brought forth a rezoning application to transform a office building into a group home shelter for women. And some of the concerns we heard was that Newport News did not have a comprehensive plan, or they didn't feel like Newport News had a comprehensive plan on how to address the homelessness in our community and how it affected nearby residents and business community. So tonight, we're not going to find a solution. This is not a time for we're going to find a solution. We're going to have a conversation. But we're hoping we're going to accomplish three things. One is to educate the public on the impact or the needs of the homeless community, the state of the homeless community in the city, as well as talk about some of the resources and services that we are already providing for the homeless. Two is to hear from you, hear your concerns, hear your questions. You may have a solution that maybe your organization or your business may be working on. We'd like to hear those solutions. And then three, we're hoping that when you leave tonight, that you'll have a sense of feeling like you're part of the solution. Because again, this is a community issue that we need to address as a community. But I hope that you will feel like you're a part of the solution, because we're gonna take all this information we hear tonight and we're gonna wrap it up and move it up to a more long-term solution for addressing the homeless needs here in the city. So with that, I wanted to go ahead and introduce the panel that we have tonight. I'll let each panel member introduce themselves and their organization. We'll start with Chief Drew.
So good evening. My name is Steve Drew. I'm the Chief of Police of Newport News. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for allowing me to be part of the discussion.
And good evening. I'm Joy Cipriano. I'm the Director of Property and Resource Development for the Hampton Newport News Community Services Board. And thanks for being here. A shout out to our Windward Towers neighbors.
Good evening. My name is Quincy White. I'm the Executive Director of Four Oaks State Service and Training Center. I'm happy to be here and be a part of the conversation.
Hello, I'm Bill Young, the Chief Innovation Officer from 4Kids, based over on South Side. Happy to be here and excited to be part of some of these solutions.
Good evening. I'm Charvela West with United Way of the Virginia Peninsula. I'm also privileged to represent the member organizations of our Continuum of Care for Homeless Services, the Greater Virginia Peninsula Homelessness Consortium.
Good evening, I'm Julie Dixon with the Planning Council, and our agency's role is to provide the administrative support for the Greater Virginia Peninsula Homelessness Consortium. So we help with coordinate the committee work, push things forward, keep everyone moving. We're not the direct service providers, we're behind the scenes trying to keep things going, and we also write the applications to help bring in the big funds to help these service providers do their jobs, and we also have the database with all the data. So that's my piece I'll be helping share with tonight.
Okay. Thank you, panelists, for being here tonight. And our moderator, Ms. Regina Brayboy. Regina Brayboy is a Senior Fellow for Human Capital with the Conference Board. She leads Performance-Centered Consulting, LCC, a practice that focuses on aligning human capital and social sector investments to maximize individual, strategic, and organizational performance. She focuses on creating healthy, engaged workplaces where employees thrive and livable communities where businesses desire to locate and participate in their growth. We welcome Ms. Regina as tonight's moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. And even though I do work now with the Conference Board, which is a national organization, actually they're an international organization, I actually got my start in community engagement work here in Newport News. I worked for the Newport News Police Department back in the 90s, and I headed the Anti-Crime Partnership, which involved 21 city agencies and citizens just like you really wanting to improve the quality of life of their communities. I've also worked in Hampton for the Hampton Coalition for Youth, and I served on their planning council. So I am, I've lived here most of my adult life, and I really care and I'm concerned about community. So I want to say this is community engagement at its best, and I'm so happy to see so many people here. This is fantastic, and this is an issue that I think we all care and we're passionate about. So I want to say a couple things just to kind of get us organized. You have 2 cards, and so hopefully you're working on getting your cards filled out. Particularly, I have a question, because those questions will help drive our conversation. And then, of course, you can also indicate your willingness to work with the city, work with the community on solving the problems of homelessness. And then you also have a suggestion card, which gives you an opportunity to put forward the solutions and recommendations that you would like to see. So please take advantage of those, and as we get the questions queued up, make sure that you're getting yours over to the table so that we can get those questions up here, and we'll get as many of them answered as possible. So right now I'm going to turn it over to the Planning Council for a data presentation, and then we'll be coming back to the questions.
All right, thank you. So I just have a few slides to show some general data. It's hard to pick and choose what's going to be easily digested as data around homelessness, but we just decided to go with some of the bigger numbers, and hopefully it's realistic for you and understandable, but let us know if you have further questions. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. So just briefly, this may not be completely clear to everybody, so I'll talk through it, but we looked at the last year, full year of data for Newport News and all of the homeless service providers who are offering different levels of services and housing programs in Newport News. And there was a total of 2,056 unique individuals who did cycle through and enter these programs in the last year that ended June 30th. And of that total, 79% of them were adults without children, so they were not part of families. So you're looking at a majority singles homeless issues. And so that's what you see for the most part. We also annually are required to do a 24-hour count. That's to receive federal funding from HUD. And so we have teams of volunteers that go out and do street counts in places where people are known to be homeless or coming in for services or meals. We also scout places like, obviously some wooded areas, and you go to the emergency rooms and you try to find everyone as best as you can. And you're also counting everybody who's in sheltered homelessness. And so January 2023, there was a total of 480 for the whole peninsula counted, and of those, 306 were located in Newport News. So this is the majority of those identified as both sheltered and street homeless in that 24-hour period, which is always just a snapshot of the whole bigger problem. But that's, so Newport News was about 64% of the total who were found in that 24-hour period. And again, 57% of them were adults without children, so still the majority. But 20 years ago, we wanted to point out when that whole thing was still new and HUD was still vamping up its programs and what kind of housing resources they could fund, and then that trickled down to states and onto local governments. The numbers were much higher during those counts, and so in 2003, in that 24-hour count, there was over 2,100 people identified and found to be in both shelters and on the streets. 136 of them were unsheltered, which was a good 100 more than we counted this past year. And then, so that's a 77% decrease, we wanted to point out, in 20 years, with the additional resources that have been added to the cities, a lot of it coming from HUD and a lot of it coming from the state, but also local resources, as people have been trying to figure out what kinds of beds and services are really valuable and helping people become sustainable. And we have, this is the winter shelter that is run by Link of Hampton Roads. They've been doing this for many years, and they are always great advocates for the homeless that they serve. And they run a winter shelter, which typically runs from November through March. And that is, like you probably know, a network of churches and volunteers, thousands of volunteers who try to help keep people safe and warm and link them to other services and help while they are open. And so this past year, they saw an uptick of about 200 more than the previous year. It was a total of 738 individuals. And 93 of those were children, so again, mostly adults. But it's important to note that 119 of them had been those who returned from the previous year of staying in that same winter shelter program. So that's 119 people who still haven't been able to find a housing solution. And yes, sometimes people say it's by choice, but in the majority of the time it's not. And so a total of those 60 that had stayed at Port throughout last season were able to be linked to a permanent housing solution. There's not a lot of those out there. That's where we struggle, is how many is building more permanent supportive housing, trying to make things available, and of course everyone knows the affordable housing crisis. So it's been a slow crawl getting people from homelessness into housing. It's not as quick as anyone would like it. I just have two more brief slides to show you. This comes directly from the big spreadsheet that gets submitted to HUD of what resources there are out there. What kinds of beds do you have for your homeless and how many? And you have several programs in Newport News that provide the emergency shelter beds. One of them is the largest one at the bottom, Port, and they usually have they can take about 100 a night. Sometimes they can go over, depending on the space in the different shelters. But totally, you have about 213-ish beds every night available through those winter months. And then it's a lot less when that closes April through October. And then the last slide is your permanent housing beds. This continuum of care has been putting a lot of effort into taking every advantage of building up permanent supportive housing beds, especially for singles and especially for those who are labeled as chronic homeless, who are meet that definition of having many episodes of being homeless or for a very long period of time. And so over the years, and my friend Joy down the row here has been a big part of building up these, and as well as Link and a few other agencies, and they have added permanent supportive housing beds for every chance they've gotten with the funding opportunities that come available from HUD and from the state. Those equal just over 200, but in addition to those are the numbers that we can't pull out just for Newport News, but the VA, the Veterans Affairs, has what they call VASH beds, and that's permanent supportive housing for veterans. There's hundreds of those available in the peninsula. I think it was over 600 counted this year. I just don't have them by jurisdiction where they all live, because that's the personal data that I don't have. But, so there is a good amount of permanent supportive housing beds available. We just still need more, and we're gonna keep striving to get more with every opportunity that we can.
So what I'd like you to do, you certainly gotten some data, which gives us a great level set as we move forward. But if you have questions relating to that presentation around the data, please also make sure you get them on the card. More than likely, if you have a question, other people have the same question, and we'll try to make sure we get them worked in as well. So to continue just giving us all, some groundwork to start thinking about, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the underlying causes for homelessness across the nation. So I'm going to go back to Julie and then to Joy on the panel to talk about what are some of the underlying causes for the increase in homelessness across the nation in the past year.
Sure,
Julie,
thank you.
Want to kick that off?
In the past year, what stands out the most is the assistance programs that came from the federal government, went through the states and through local governments that assisted people during our COVID pandemic emergency. We were literally told, get everybody off the streets, get them safe, put them in hotel programs. And that's what happened as of June 2020 until about September-ish or the late 2022. And the funds dried up completely. And so a lot of, at the same time, we had eviction moratoriums end. So landlords were again allowed to evict. And the courts can tell you that there have been some busy days long days of handling those cases. So there's more to come on that later, but that is something that's really just pushed the numbers above and beyond, is in the past year was all those funds ending and not everyone having a solution. And then the evictions, if you're being evicted, where are you gonna go? So affordable housing is such a problem. We have a lot of people living in doubled up situations, but we do have more on the streets than we have seen, and that's across the nation. You also have reasons that are, sometimes it's domestic violence, sometimes it's mental health, substance use, and Joy can speak a bit more to that. You've got unstable persons with different issues and episodes and trauma in their life, and they're not able to to maintain self-sufficiently their own place. And so this is continuing to build and grow. I'm going to lob that more to Joy because she knows a lot more about that.
Joy, you want to speak to that?
Thank you. Well, Julie, you hit the top one, which is our current economy. And that's partly we're seeing all these numbers, because as we've reduced the number of supply of housing and landlords have been able to evict people, as they evict people, they keep raising the rents. And they've raised the rents to the point where even those of us who have rent subsidies can't afford it, because they know how to get it just over that number where we can't pay it, right? And they're using credit histories, criminal histories, much more. So if you have somebody who's been homeless and has seen jail and hospitalizations, and they have like zero income right now, and you have somebody who's gonna pay you that $1,600 for a one-bedroom apartment, who are you gonna take? So even those of us who have been building up our housing resources are finding it not only harder to get people into housing, but it's taking so long. We've seen people stay in shelters 6 months to a year, which means there's no place for other homeless people to come into. They simply cannot move. They're stuck. So even when we have the resources, we are often kind of held captive by the fact that there's not enough of the housing out there that's affordable to people who are making, pretty much minimum wage or less, and the CSB serves people who, for the most part, are only earning 14% of the area median income. So really, really poor. And there's just not enough. Now, Julie mentioned mental illness. Mental illness affects 1 in 5 individuals. So look around this room. It was set up for about 200, I believe. That means at least, if you do the math, it's about 40 people in here no, I'm not saying they're in here, but have either a mental illness or they have a child, a grandchild, a brother, a sister who have mental illness. Well, it's getting harder and harder to get individuals with mental illness into places where they can be safe as well. Eastern State is over census. So it's harder and harder to get individuals into Eastern State. We have such a high stigma when it comes to mental illness that people just don't reach out for help. And one of the things we're learning, one of the things that we're finally getting the message is that over half of the homeless, around 55% of the adults and over 20% of children who are homeless had traumatic brain injuries before they became homeless. So they are trying to live a life with a traumatic brain injury, just like some of the individuals are who are coming back from war zones. Then they become homeless. They have additional traumatic brain injuries because how often do they get hit? How often do they fall and lose consciousness because they've hit concrete? So we then have mental illness on top of traumatic brain injuries, and we are expecting individuals to do this, that, and follow all these rules and pay their rent on time and everything else. And it's very, very complicated. So it takes a lot of work. So as we have run out of supply and it's costing more, we're finding that whether it's mental illness or substance abuse, and let's not forget the opioid crisis that we've got, we have got so many negative things that are coming to play all at once within this past couple of years. No matter how much good we're doing and how much, as we've seen, we've achieved over the past 20 years. So we're having to work really hard at this, and a shout out to all the people I see out there that are doing this work every day.
Okay. And I also just want to make another announcement that there's a handout on data and resources that's available with this QR code, and I think most of you guys have that in should have that in your packet as well. So I'm going to come back to you, Joy, for a minute. Can you address a little bit about what the Hampton Newport News Community Services Board does to assist the homeless in Newport News?
Oh, absolutely. Hampton Newport News CSB is one of the largest of the 40 CSBs across the state. And very lucky, at least lucky for me, is they were very willing to take the risk and get involved in homelessness and housing back around 1997. And we started with emergency housing, and we have built since then. So right now, as the evidence-based practices come out and we learn more about what works, the Hampton Newport News CSB has bought and developed 4 apartment complexes. That sounds great. We also have greatly expanded our permanent supportive housing, not only through HUD, and you see those 3 up there, those are HUD, but the state of Virginia, through the Department of Behavioral Health, has realized the significance of stable housing for individuals with serious mental illnesses and have provided funding. It's kind of like Section 8 on steroids, to assist people who are homeless or who are coming out of Eastern State or coming out of jail who have serious mental illnesses. We also have a program for pregnant and parenting women with substance use disorders. It sounds great. We probably have more housing options, and right now it's hovering around between 400 and 500 places for individuals with mental illness. That sounds so wonderful, but what you need to know is the Hampton Newport News CSB serves over 13,000 unduplicated individuals every year. Out of that 13,000, over 80% are earning 14% of the area median income or less. So we have more housing than CSBs come to us and they want to know how we did it, and we've got some great board members, past and present even, that are here. Fabulous. They had all that, took these risks and developed this housing, but we need this much. We need this much. If I could open up an apartment complex a day, I still wouldn't have enough. So the Hampton Newport News does a lot, and we do walk-in Wednesdays downtown, and we also are at Four Oaks. We have a homeless services group that do outreach. They do go to the campsites. They go to places where we've heard people are. They will go anywhere. They go to the shelters in the wintertime. They go to the shelters in the daytime to try to connect people with housing. So between our outreach, our emergency housing, our temporary housing, our permanent supportive housing, and then all the whole array of support services that we have at the CSB, there's a lot there. Substance abuse, mental health services, services for those with developmental disabilities. But you gotta get the homeless off the street and in somewhere, because you have to have an address. It's easier to have a doctor's appointment if you have an address. If you're stably housed, you're more willing to take your medications, right? So again, the CSB has a lot we can do and a lot we can offer, but sometimes the very first thing we need to do is get the individual off the street and in some kind of stable housing with the support services and staff around them that can care for those individuals.
Yeah.
Maybe not as well as their mama, but, you know, we do what we can.
And Joy, I just want to come back to you again, just because I want to kind of zero on this. Certainly, this is not just a Newport News problem. So from a regional perspective, can you speak to what you see happening? And you may have already alluded to some of those, but if you can kind of tell us what's happening regionally.
Well, we're actually lucky in one way, in that the Virginia Peninsula has always worked together as a region. We know that the homeless problem, you're on one side of the street in Hampton, you're on the other side of the street, you're in Newport News, you know, and that happens in York County and James City County all the time. But this group, and yeah, it had a lot to do with money, but we knew that individually each locality couldn't do very much with the amount of money that was allocated. But if we put it together, we really could. So we started in 1990, coming together as a region, and back then it was called Home Base. And then in 1996, we created the Greater Virginia Peninsula Homelessness Consortium. So they've been bringing in funds, federal, state, et cetera. So a lot of what we have managed to achieve is partly because we have partnered with these other communities. So there is a group that worked together for winter shelter and housing up in the Williamsburg, James City County, York area. There's some that are down here. We coordinate so that there is not a duplication of services, that we are being very good stewards of any public money. It's not being wasted. So as a region, we have done, again, what other places in Virginia, but again, this is not even a Newport News, it's not a region, it's not a state issue, it's not even national. This problem we're seeing right here in our community is also global. We're hearing the same things out of England and Germany and Sweden, you know, places that you don't think. So the whole world is kind of struggling with what do we do, and most of it's from the same cause, which is the economy, COVID. Can we just say COVID? Just keep saying COVID over and over again. But it seems to do better when we do come together collaboratively with the Mayors and Chairs Commission on Homelessness. They come together at the higher level of elected officials. So we've really been able to do, and I'm not blowing smoke, and it's not that we don't need more, but we've done what we've done because we really have worked together.
Great. Thank you so much. And Trouble, I think you wanted to follow up on that. And then I was also going to ask you what resources are in place to help prevent evictions in Newport News.
Thank you. I think all of it kind of ties together and goes back to your first question about what's influenced the increase that we've seen recently. I think, so first, in relation to the increase, the moratorium and the state rent relief and the federal rent relief programs, while many are so proud of them, what we've seen is they've actually delayed what we're seeing today. Evictions actually increased higher than they were pre-pandemic once the state relief programs ended. And in addition to that, it's created quite a difficult environment, not only for tenants whose rents are increasing every time they re-sign a lease, right? But they're also difficult conditions for landlords to be able to maintain their properties, rent out their properties, and it makes it really hard for us to partner because we need landlords, we need tenants, and so all of us are striving to make this a better environment, community, and we really do all need to work together. And that brings me to the Greater Virginia Peninsula Homelessness Consortium. That's a long name, GVPAC. And there are about 30 organizations that are included that provide services from preventing homelessness, providing emergency shelter, rehousing folks as they experience homelessness, and then, as Julie mentioned, folks who are chronically homeless and have been experiencing that for long periods of time or frequently, there are special programs. And so collectively, it really does take all of us. I'm very proud of the work that the GPHC has done over the years. Joy talked about the growth and the history, but in this last year, it's been more difficult than we've ever seen. And that required us to innovate. And I'm really excited to see the efforts show an impact in the coming years because we need it to. What we found is that many people who are working, and you'll hear, if you haven't heard us talk about it before, you'll remember this, working sometimes multiple jobs, jobs that require training, education. Think of our first responders, our teachers, the average salaries of those people that we rely on to make our community run, to make our economy run, to make our community safe. We refer to that population as ALICE. It's an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. Working, just not making enough to get month to month, or one car repair away from a financial downturn. And what we're finding is more and more folks are experiencing that scarcity that happens when my wages aren't keeping up with my expenses every month as rents continue to go up. And so we've been very proud to work with several organizations, our local governments and social services, our faith community, to administer the first ever Virginia eviction reduction pilot. And here on the peninsula, that looks like a network of over 150 organizations working to keep people housed. We believe that if we can keep people housed, not only do we save money as a community, because it costs a lot more to shelter and rehouse folks, but we also avoid the trauma of housing loss and the trauma of homelessness. And so that's what we've been doing. We're very proud that with this eviction reduction pilot, we have a court navigation program. But this is really an example of what our community can do when we come together. I won't nerd out on the data too much. I have a tendency to do that. But just very briefly, I'll share with you, right after the moratorium ended and the rent relief program at the state had no more funds, right before that, the eviction rate in Newport News was 10.6%. That's how many people had a court date to say, I didn't pay my rent, I gotta go to court, and how many people actually got evicted and lost their housing, right? So 10.6%. It jumped at its height over this last year to 19.2%. Now, with that, that's a huge increase, but we're already starting to see the decrease, and that's relying on what we have here locally. We cannot call on the state anymore. And so what that's looked like is many people who relied on that state rent relief for 2 years, they no longer have access to that, and they're having a hard time catching up. And so with that, we're working together to address those issues, but that's what the environment has looked like in terms of keeping people housed, reducing evictions, and therefore reducing the impact for our community.
Thank you. I want to come to our other panelists to get their reactions, just to do a little bit more of a level set here on the causes and resources that are available in the community. So I would like to, Bill, do you want to comment on what you've seen in terms of causes of homelessness in our
Sure.
region and in our area?
At 4Kids, we're the largest provider of homeless services to families in the state. Most of our work in direct service is Southside in the 5 cities of Southampton roads. I would really, in terms of the specific causes right now, would echo Julie's comments from earlier, the elimination of the resources that became available, but at the same time that those resources stopped, we've experienced, and I don't know the exact numbers in Newport News, but those numbers of rent increases over the last several years has totaled somewhere in the neighborhood of 40%. We've seen wonderful increases in wages in some low-income jobs at the same time, but it has not nearly kept up with rents. And so fundamentally, the cause of homelessness is a lack of affordable housing. It is housing that I cannot live in. And so what we saw, by example, in our family shelter is before the pandemic, we were at 40 days on average in shelter. We doubled the size of our shelter, opened it 2 years ago, but shelter stays increased to over 120 days. And so our ability to serve more people all of a sudden became serving fewer people, but for longer, because there simply weren't available apartments. One of the things that is not related to the pandemic and is across the United States is we have not built sufficient housing to keep up with population and job creation, and generally we reap what we sow. If we don't build adequate housing, then that is fundamentally the cause of homelessness. All these other pieces I would echo as well play a role in it. Healthcare plays a role in it, mental health, substance abuse, all plays a role, but fundamentally it's a lack of places for people to live.
Great, thank you. Chief Drew, I want to come to you. What do you see in your line of work as some of the factors that contribute to homelessness in our community?
Well, thank you. In law enforcement, first I would echo a lot of the same things that I've heard my colleagues and panelists say. We see individuals that are down on their luck, that financially can't make it or struggle, or that have recently unemployed, individuals that suffer from mental illness, or some that have physical limitations, physical disabilities, individuals that drug addictions, alcohol. We talked about the mental side. Individuals that maybe be reclusive and or maybe have had some things traumatic happen in their life. There are some that choose that, but I don't see that as the bigger part. Now in law enforcement, for us, we try to balance. No police officer wants to arrest anyone that's homeless. We don't want to take that case in front of our judge. I know Sheriff Morgan, my friend, was here. We don't want to put those individuals in getting the treatment there. For us, it's always going to be is how do we get to know someone and get them treatment or find, and all these different entities that we've talked about and partnerships that we have. That is where we would like to go. Though then we also have to balance, right, the business owner who has individuals that may be encamped in front of their business, or individuals that properties that may become damaged, or if there's property damage to that location, individuals that leave litter or food out. And I have 2 colleagues here with me. I really appreciate them coming tonight, Officer Grayhouse and Captain Dunbar. They both meet every Thursday with Quincy and 4 Oaks and city manager's office and people from the city to one, we educate our officers, right? Sometimes that we don't learn a lot about homelessness in our training academy. So what are some of the issues that we're going to run into? How are the best ways to address it and look for solutions and ideas? But we also don't, I have to be honest, I also worry sometimes about our homeless population being taken advantage of, being targeted, right? Victims of crime that may occur. Oh, no, they're not going to report it, or they're not going to call the police. They don't have those means. So there's a whole plethora of things that we try to balance in law enforcement. But at the end of the day, I think my colleagues have listed a number of issues. I would echo that. I would agree with that. But for us, it's really trying to find solutions, and maybe we'll talk about later on some of the plans that we've talked about in the police department to move forward. And maybe have a group of officers or a team of officers that really focus on homelessness to get to know them individually and work with our other partners as a better resource, if there's a better way to do, as we try to keep our community safe and look out for and interact with our homeless population.
Quincy, I'm going to come to you now. Causes, and you want to add anything? I know a lot's been said, and is there
Sure.
anything else you want to add to kind of help us fill that picture out, and then also speak to resources? So causes and resources that you see in the community.
Sure. So I would just, support everything that the panelists said. There's a lack of affordable housing in Newport News. We've seen in certain situations that landlords are asking for 3 times the amount of rent. And obviously that's something that our folks have a hard time affording. But yeah, I support everything that the panelists are saying, that, there's just a lack of affordable housing for our folks here in Newport News.
Great. All right, so now I'm going to drill into lots of questions here about Four Oaks. So Quincy, on an annual basis, let me see if get back to this question. What is Four Oaks, and what services or programs are provided to the homeless through Four Oaks?
Sure. So Four Oaks State Service and Training Center, we provide all the services a homeless citizen would need to transition from homelessness to self-sufficiency. That includes barbershops, salons, laundry, showers. We have a storage program. We have one of the largest clothing closets in the state. We even have a furniture department to furnish the homes of the homeless once they're housed. We see roughly, during the warmer months, probably 80 to 100 patrons every day. And during the colder months, we probably see about 100 to 150. We have housing specialists that work with both singles and homeless families to transition to housing. We have a behavioral health team as well, and we also work very closely with the Community Service Board to provide all the behavioral health services that folks would need. We even have a medical clinic in partnership with Southeastern Virginia Health Systems, as well as the Lackey Clinic, to engage folks in regards to the medical services that they may need, as well as the behavioral health services that they may need. I would encourage anyone that's interested in learning more to stop by for a tour. It's better to see it than me to tell you. And as a division of human services, we have a slew of other services that we could provide. If that's connected folks with adult protective services or engaging them to get their benefits here in Newport News, we have everything a homeless citizen will need, again, to transition from homelessness to self-sufficiency.
Okay. So I have a question, and you may have spoken to this, but what was promised to the community when the Four Oaks Daycare Center was approved? Is that a good question for you?
That's a great question. I would say, that's a question that I may not be able to answer, but at least from the folks that I speak to, it seems as if, when Four Oaks was created, we're going to be a beacon of hope for the homeless in Newport News. So everything a person would need to assist themselves, again, to transition from homelessness to housing would be at Four Oaks, and I think we've met that need.
Okay, great. And then this probably comes back to Chief Drew, but what can be done to alleviate the congregating between Four Oaks and the daily press in the evenings and overnight? After all, Four Oaks was promoted as a day facility, so that might be Quincy and Chief Drew to speak about that issue.
Sure. So that's a great question. And if I'm hearing you correctly, what happens to individuals after Four Oaks closes down and individuals start to congregate? Is that correct?
Yes.
So as we get into the winter months, when it gets colder, we partner with a lot of churches and different entities that do port, and officers will, if individuals are looking for shelter to get out of the element, we have a place to take them. We'll even do some overtime patrols to help shuttle, to make advances. Our communications knows that those calls come in. So it helps us that way. In the evening, once Four Oaks closes, it is a concern. What I have seen, or what I hear from officers, is that individuals stay close to where they feel safe. So Four Oaks, I believe, is a place that they feel that they're serviced, that they have connection with. They're there when they open their doors. So they don't want to venture too far from that. If it's kind of like a home base or a feeling of security for someone else, they don't want to go too far from that. So I think the best thing for us to do, like I said, we don't want to just go in and arrest individuals. That doesn't help anything. What we try to do is get to know individuals. What is the individual concerns? We certainly don't want individuals that are hanging out or are sleeping out in front of businesses. I also worry about their health, but I think sometimes they stay together for protection as well, that they feel if they're out and alone, and am I going to be taken advantage of, or is something going to happen to me? So officers will try to act with them. We certainly don't want trash and things to accumulate, those type things. That's where Officer Greathouse comes in, and what services we can provide. Who do we know? What contacts do we have? And all our regional partners that we have, and here at the table, and others that are several in the community and in the audience here tonight. But it's a complex problem when we talk about individuals that are gathering. And I was talking to Mr. Archer. We had a late conversation last night as he toured and told me some of the locations he's looked at. But it is try to understand what we have. And there are some concerns, but I have to be honest, I understand the fear that some may have and wanting to be close to where they're going to be back at or what they're used to, and then in safety. So it's monitoring that, interacting with those individuals, trying to understand what the situation is, and then seeing what options we have from our other partners and individuals that we work with consistently.
Do you have anything to add on it?
Sure. So I would add to that. So many of the individuals that you see on 75th Street are engaged in services. It's a process to get housed. It's a process to increase your income. But those individuals are engaged with us at Four Oaks. One thing that I did forget to mention, that we do provide transportation services. We work very closely with NMPD. If they see individuals that are homeless and are in need of help, we do send our team out to meet those individuals to connect them with services. So a lot of the folks that you see on 75th Street, again, are engaged with our services and are working towards housing or working towards employment.
Great. And Chief Drew, this may be for you, but why are there no loitering signs posted on 75th Street between Warwick Boulevard and River Road? And that might speak to what's happening after Four Oaks closes, or is that a different area? I'm sorry. That is the area. So why are there no loitering signs posted on 75th Street between Warwick and River Road?
Why are there no loitering signs posted? So we have to be careful that we're not posting no loitering signs on public right-of-way where individuals can be. And as long as we're not blocking sidewalks and blocking right-of-ways, individuals have the right to be in locations. When we talk about loitering, again, we want to make sure that we're not in the roadway, that we're not disrupting traffic, that we're not being aggressive. When I mean that on either side, but we have to be careful about where we post and how we post those signs and loitering, and where we're trying to move people to. And some of the questions that we get asked is, Chief, Officer, if you don't want me here, where do you want me to go? Mm-hmm. And what I don't want, we need our officers in the neighborhoods and our communities patrolling our areas, right? Making sure that our citizens see us. So what I can't do is just move individuals from block to block to block. It's really about trying to get to know individuals, what their concerns are, what are some of their issues, who do we have that's already getting services, can we make some movement? We've done some posting on our city medians, if individuals have seen that recently. I think our partners in Hampton have done the same. But we have to really be careful about where we're posting no loitering and working with the businesses and Quincy, I don't know if you want to add to that, but we do look at some of those things, and is that the best place? Is that the best route of action to take with the situation that we have?
Sure. So again, a lot of the folks that you see on 75th Street or throughout the city, when we're engaged with services, we do refer to some of the emergency shelters that are here in Newport News. If that's the men's shelter downtown, or menstrual house for single women and families, we do refer them to different emergency shelters that are throughout the city. Again, there is a process. You have to go through our coordinated entry system, and that's based off of the level of need that individuals may have. So the person with the highest level of need will be referred to shelter first versus someone that may not have that level of need. So again, everything is a process. A lot of those individuals we engage with, we do refer to emergency shelter.
Okay, great.
Or to permanent shelter.
Or permanent shelter.
I'm looking at him because we get a lot of his referrals.
Yes.
And if I might just add, again, they're there because, as you said, there's no place to go. So if we can get them engaged in services, and if there's housing where we can move them to, then you start to see them, see the numbers, again, keep going down. But again, they're not going to be, you can't not be homeless unless there's a house you can go into. Because the solution to homelessness is housing. So we still got to, and I think, Bill, I think you brought that up really well. In order for them to get out of the streets, to get out and move through Four Oaks, there has to be some place for them to go. And right now, we have such a limited supply of housing, affordable housing, there's no place to go.
So speaking of that, are there plans to create a regional overnight shelter? Anyone on the panel have any thoughts about that? To be deferred. Okay.
Okay, I'll just say that that topic has come up often over the years. One of the things that we learned, because many of you might remember we had Friends of the Homeless Shelter, and we also had, what was the other one, 50-bed shelter we have, Salvation Army. Both of those closed within a couple of years of each other. So we lost 100 beds of emergency shelter. And that sounds like that was a horrible thing to happen, and yes, in a way it was. But what it also made all of us do who were serving the homeless is that we had to come up with a better way to move them from the streets directly into housing. And it's called Housing First, and it works really well. The outcomes are great. The cost to the taxpayer is so much less. But again, you have to have the units for them to go to. And whenever the topic of overnight shelter comes up, you have to ask, okay, what neighborhood is going to say, yes, pick me. We want them here. We want them off the street. We want to take care of them. Any neighborhood in here going to raise your hand? Thank you. Thank you.
I might add
That's important.
real quickly on that is that for kids, we were successful 2 years ago in siting a family shelter in South Norfolk and Chesapeake, and very much with the support of the city, but most importantly, the Civic League in the neighborhood. And that has been, it can be done, and I think the hands raised, I think it can be a very successful thing. It's a hard thing. It requires a lot of engagement. It requires the ability to talk through things. And honestly, one of the ways we did it is we connected it to our team, which is 100+ college-educated folks that are working in that space. And so there was a huge benefit. At the same time, there was seen as a challenge with the families, but these families were living in the neighborhood already. And so that's been very successful. So it can be done.
And by the way, their place is gorgeous. Absolutely
Thank you.
gorgeous. Can I just say that?
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, you can build something nice for people that are in a tough spot. And our experience has been that the cost of that can be very reasonable, relatively speaking, and that it actually then supports the service level. And what we find is that by having a space that's calming and light-filled with natural product, our families that we serve there directly on site tend to be much more calm and ready to engage in services as opposed to building a very institutional building.
Right. And I really want to applaud the spirit of the questions. I can't wait to see your some of the solutions and recommendations, because a lot of these do reflect a level of compassion and from the audience in terms of what can we do to help and how do we alleviate homelessness. So one of the questions we have now is, how do we help panhandlers? Is there a comprehensive list or flyer that we could hand out to these individuals? I don't know.
Oh, I'll take that on. We do have a flyer. We have some rack cards in the back in regards to some of the services that we provide at Four Oaks. Again, it has our number. You could call us if you see someone that's panhandling in need of services. We will go out, we'll pick that individual up, and we'll connect them to the services that we have. We don't necessarily have a robust outreach team, but we utilize our housing specialists, our case managers, our behavioral health team, the CSB, to engage individuals that are street homeless. So again, if you see anyone on the street in need of help that may be panhandling, please give us a call. We will engage with that individual and connect it to the services at the day center.
And this is connected to that. How can a small organization get more involved or connected with other community partners so that we can work better together?
I'll be happy to answer that.
Yeah.
So the Greater Virginia Peninsula Homelessness Consortium, the GVPHC, invites organizations of all types and sizes to join our work. It's intended to be a continuum where we have diversity of thought and service to make it easier for people experiencing homelessness to get what they need. So I'll be happy to talk to whomever afterwards. We also have a website that you can go on to join, HamptonRoadsEndsHomelessness.org, where you can register your organization. It's a very small membership dues. Annually, it's like $35. You get the opportunity for scholarships to go to conferences, to learn more about solutions. And it's the best way to connect with the work that's already happening in our community and figure out where you fit in.
And if you don't want to join as an organization, just show up. We've been meeting every month since 1996, and we have welcomed the faith communities and individuals. We've had individuals come to us who have lived without housing and have achieved a level of self-sufficiency. We have pastors. The big part of the GVPHC is to make sure that we're using whatever resources that are available very wisely. We're using any taxpayer money, whether it's federal or state, wisely. We're not duplicating. We're finding ways to reduce barriers. And the one nice thing about those federal and state dollars is they're making us accountable. We have to meet certain targets. They actually turn around and say, all right, are you reducing homelessness? Are people staying less in homelessness? So those of us who get funds are held accountable, and the GVPHC is the way we are each looked at under a microscope to make sure we're doing that. But all the partners we can get on the peninsula are welcome. Individuals, organizations, churches, faith communities, clubs, whatever. You're all needed.
Great. And this is somewhat related to the whole notion of how do we help the homeless. Is there financial assistance available for individuals to obtain vital records, which will assist the homeless in obtaining jobs, assistance, and housing?
Sure, I could speak to that. So we partner with Project ID that works with homeless citizens to receive their vital records. So if that's a social security card, a driver's license, a birth certificate. She meets with our patrons at the day center every other week, every other Thursday, to work with those to get those vital records that are needed for employment and for housing.
Great. And in a similar vein, we've heard about these, but are there business clothing closets for individuals who are homeless to get clothes for an interview?
Yes, so we have our clothing department at Four Oaks. I would love for you all to stop by and tour our clothing closet. It's one of the largest in the state. We're always looking for men's clothing at our clothing department. So now the Heart of Giving, as well as Tori's Closet, oversees our clothing department. So we're always looking for folks to drop goods off. So if you're interested, I believe Amy Jones is here with the Heart of Giving. She would be someone to speak to.
Stand up, Amy, so they know who they're taking their stuff to.
Oh, in Tori's Closet. That's right.
Excellent. So this goes back to, kind of thinking about some of these end games that we have for homeless individuals. How are we reintegrating individuals with housing instability with their families? Are their families contacted? Or are there efforts to make them part of the solution? And I will just throw that out too.
Sure. So at Four Oaks Day Services Training Center, we partner with the Housing Broker Team. So the Housing Broker Team works with homeless families in regards to transitioning from homelessness to housing. They provide all the wraparound case management services needed for a homeless family. So those are families with children under the age of 18. They are engaged with them. They work with them to connect the resources in the community.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple other questions relating to the end game for homelessness in our community, and I would sort of ask each one of our panelists to sort of speak to where you see our end game for dealing with homelessness? What are we trying to achieve here? Then we'll start with Chief Drew.
So I think it's continued persistence. What I've seen is the citizens of Newport News care greatly about individuals who are homeless. I don't think there's any question with that. The outpouring, the different groups and individuals who want, how do I help? How do I help? What can I do? I think there's a tremendous shift there of trying to make things better. For us, it is learning as much as we can and having officers respond and knowing the different entities. We have a great relationship with Quincy and his team at Four Oaks and the different service providers that are there. As we evolve in law enforcement in the Newport News Police Department, the things that I'm looking at is selecting 2 officers that are dedicated to address individuals who are homeless, to get to know those individuals, to know them by name. So when we do the counts, when we go into some of the encampments, when we're looking for resources, when we're trying to connect people to housing, when we know that we've lost track of someone, the immediate resources we can go or make contact with. And when I look at it is if we could select a section, right, and work with panhandling and those individuals and then move, right? So get something under control and move and show some wins there. But I think that's the direction that we're moving in the police department. We certainly have officers that, we get calls or routine in the districts that they patrol. But I would really like to have a dedicated team, and they don't have to work out of the police department. They can work in several of our different entities. They could be housed in Four Oaks where they're coming in contact. I want them to have the ability and resources that on a name basis. I think when you know someone, it is easier to have interactions with and make connections and solve problems as opposed to I dealt with this officer today and this officer yesterday, and they both kind of handled this situation differently. But I would really like to see us have a dedicated team to focus on issues with homelessness, areas where we see pockets of homelessness, and make it an effort. I don't think it's something we can hit just once. We have to continue and stay consistent.
And I guess for the Hampton Newport News Community Services Board, okay, I'm one of the old ones here who's been doing this since 1987. And I've seen how much improvement has been made, even among the neighborhoods and the communities. I've seen how Newport News and Hampton have come together to come up with solutions. The Community Services Board serves both cities, and we have an amazing array of services for those with mental illnesses, with substance abuse disorders, and with developmental disabilities. Yes, we serve a lot of people, but we need to serve more. We need to break down the stigma of coming in and saying help. We have to have people start to say, enough is enough with the fentanyl and the overdoses, and to stop hiding that, and to feel okay about coming in and getting behavioral health services just as they would any doctor for any other disease. And if we can keep on developing our housing options, our financial assistance to prevent homelessness, to move them quickly into housing, whether it's from the CSB or anyone along in the homelessness consortium, if we can get more housing and we can move them quicker, we're going to keep on seeing an improvement. Some of us were part of the veterans effort, and Virginia was the first state in the entire nation to end veteran homelessness. Are they all not homeless? No, they could become homeless. The idea is to have that system where we move them quickly from moving from homelessness into housing. It's a functional kind of program, and if we can keep doing that in our community, whether they're veterans or individuals with mental illness or substance abuse or families with kids, I think we will finally start to end homelessness. And I tell people, I'm not going to retire yet because we haven't ended homelessness. We're going to have to do it before I retire, so we got to get going, y'all.
End game for you in terms of Quincy?
Sure. I would say 2 things. Reading the data better, recognizing what some of the trends are, recognizing what those gaps of services may be. but ultimately collaboration, expanding on our collaboration with concerned citizens, community stakeholders, nonprofit partners to better serve our homeless community.
I'll continue with, especially with federal, state, and local officials here, in the residents, is we just need to bang the drum for more supply of housing. We need lots of different housing options. We need multifamily options. We need accessory dwelling units. We need improved zoning with much reduced red tape so that people can build quickly. It's a long-term solution, but at the end of the day, we need greater supply. We can do lots of efficient and effective things in the short term to move people through, and I think we're doing a lot of really positive things relative to that. But unless there is a place to go, we cannot deal with this issue in a long, permanent, positive way. And the issues that we're fighting, whether they be loitering, whether they be recurring homelessness, whether they be broken families, it fundamentally comes back to creating an environment where we can build an adequate supply of housing for our citizens.
First is keep people housed. That's for us what we're working towards. And then when someone does experience homelessness, the GVPHC works to make sure that it's rare when it happens and brief if it does, and that it doesn't happen again. That's our goal.
I think the only thing I can add to these great comments and answers so far is that we do need to tailor services for special populations, and we see a growing number of homeless older adults, and that's terrifying to me. And I think of my own family and how easy it could be to enter homelessness as an older adult with less mobility, with less resources, and the inability to maybe work at that point. And I think that youth services, that's another one. You've got your domestic violence, you've got your families versus singles. There's a lot of special populations within the homeless population, but we can't not address those specifically. They need certain kinds of care. They need certain kinds of services, and I hope that we would continue to reach out and grow the continuum for those who are interested in working with that. There's more and more committee work around those special issues, and that those numbers of resources never are in great supply. I will say the healthcare programs around this region, whether they're a small free clinic all the way up to the big healthcare systems, have been more and more engaged, and they want to help with the housing and help support people who are coming into their own emergency rooms and services in different ways, and they see them repeat over and over again, and there's no solution, and they want to be partners for housing. So those kinds of models are out there, and we keep meeting with them more and more to hopefully bring that here and build housing with healthcare partners.
Great. So I think we've done a great job of covering a lot of landscape at this point. But what I'd like to do is put a few of you on the spot. Does anybody have a solution or a recommendation or something that you would like to see happen with respect to homelessness in Newport News? And if you want to stand up or come to the forward, come to the front, we can do a few of these. I have a gentleman right here, and then the gentleman right here, and then the lady right here. We'll try to get as many as possible, so the gentleman here.
I've lived in Newport News all my life. I am dedicating as much time as I possibly can to providing a solution to this problem, at least in the city of Newport News, which extends to Hampton. We have a wonderful opportunity right now. We have the world's greatest shipbuilder, one of the state's largest employers, and the entire U.S. Navy looking at providing a solution to create a lifestyle here on the peninsula. Now, that's a lot to unpack, but we need to prepare for that. We need to bring in all of the horsepower we can bring in from the private sector, business sector, faith sector, everywhere we can find it to create a lifestyle for the guys that fight for us every day. Every day, the Navy has said to the shipyard, find a solution, because neither one of them know what that solution is. What I did was purchase St. Paul's Church recently. It's at 221 34th Street. The mission of that church since its inception in 1888 has been to provide for the disadvantaged. They created the Miracle on 34th Street here in Newport News. We have got to rally around the development community, the people that are going to develop the property for a profit. That profit's going to be shared with the community. We've got to work with the shipyard and the Navy to create a lifestyle downtown Newport News. And we need to do it now. I mean, I'm 73, I'm real impatient. I like to be spending time in Charleston with my grandchildren. But I've seen what a town like Charleston can do to address issues like that. We can do it right here, and we've got wonderful opportunities to partner with our business community and the development right now.
Excuse me.
Cameron Smith, Da In, Jeremy Brown, anybody else that's been connected with what we're trying to do in the development downtown, stand up. I think they're, Omar, are you here? We have been affected in our development efforts. Every building I've bought has somebody sleeping in front of it or has been invaded. Officer Grayhouse knows. We have got to find a solution, and we've got to find it now, and I think the business community can be a great help. So the St. Paul's Church and Cameron Smith, who's a recent graduate of Morehouse College, will be there on a daily basis to get names of people interested in helping the solution to this problem, to having meetings, because this meeting could go on for 3 days. But we're going to have this meeting set up and a place to set up for these meetings to occur weekly if we have to, because we're in a hurry. And we've got to give the Navy the lifestyle that they want here. We've got to build the housing, and we can do it. It's in an opportunity zone. They're low-income dollars. VHDA needs it. There's a wonderful opportunity. Let's get together and do it. And St. Paul's Church and Cameron, if you want to see him after, to give him your card and he can share contact information, we'll set up a place where we're going to try to have some solutions to all this stuff.
Thank you so much. Excuse me, just give me a second, the mayor has.
So I forgot to just lay down some ground rules in the beginning. So do not worry, we're going to try to get through as many questions as possible, but don't worry, there's many city council members. We have senior staff all across the wall. So if we don't get to your question, do not worry. We have plenty of time, but also we're going to be around the wall. And I forgot to mention a few people that walked into the room. I know the Vice Mayor, Curtis Bethany, walked in. I know School Board Member Maritza Alger walked in. And I could not forget our Sheriff, Gabe Morgan, that's sitting in the back. So once again, it's more than just federal, state, local. It's our constitutional officers, it's our schools. There's many different vantage points when it comes to unhoused population. Thank you.
And I do need to call on Carolyn Holter. Is she at the mic? Great, Carolyn. To make sure.
Yes. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Minister Carolyn Holter, and I've been out there on the street for the past 5 months now. I started out just going out to, well, let me back up. I feel led by God to go out to take care of the homeless. I have such a passion for the homeless. And when I went out there, I just couldn't believe some of the conditions that the homeless people were living in. I had a chance to go back in the woods to see where they were sleeping at. I've seen the elderly mothers out there on the ground sleeping. I've seen them sleeping in the rain, out in the heat. And matter of fact, a couple of them caught sunstrokes just last week. I've been going out there 7 days a week, feeding them. People I go over to the 4 Oaks. I'm over on that property. I see them all up and down the road. 4 Oaks, after 4 Oaks closes at 5 o'clock, these people are out on the street. They're hungry. They don't have no food. Every day I cook in my kitchen. I've spent very much close to $4,000 or more of my money that I took to go out to feed these homeless people. And I was out there one day, and I seen a homeless man. He had had a stroke. And matter of fact, we've given them about 30 tents. And we're giving this homeless man a tent. And I was out taking the food one evening, and I looked in the woods, and there he was, trying to get down in the tent. Tears came to my heart. I say, how in the world did you wind up out here? How did you get here? He have a stroke on a stick, trying to get on the ground. I took that man, and I bought him some clothes, and I said, why don't you go with me to church Sunday? And I tried to get some help for him at church. I couldn't get the church to pay $79 for the man to stay the night in the motel. This is a wealthy church. Couldn't get him to pay $79. But I refused to let him go back out in the street. I bought him and asked my husband first. And I found out when he had that stroke, he got evicted. He couldn't work anymore. He got down, no family here. So my husband let me bring him in. Mr. Ernest, can you just stand up for a minute? He's here with me. Please stand up. From Uganda. He's from Uganda. He been staying. I took him off the street. Didn't know him, nothing about him. I felt led by God to love up on him because he don't have anybody. He's 74 years old. And I'm going to take him to Washington, to the embassy to get his passport and stuff right. I've been out there feeding the people, 4 Oaks clients, laying on the sidewalk, sick. And the worst thing that I hate about what I seen, the mentally sick women being abused. I see some women come right out the hospital, and they told me, say, blah, blah, say, well, you watch over them. He takes them down in the woods, and he takes advantage of these sick women. My heart cries for these women. While we're sitting here trying to discuss what we need to do, people are suffering. They're developing more mental illness. Why are we trying to figure this thing out? If the city have any buildings that's available, give these buildings up. Give these buildings up. Let us go in. I'm out here looking. If I could find 2 buildings, I'll dedicate my life to getting these people off the street because I can't sleep at night. When I know somebody's mother out there laying on the sidewalk, somebody don't have food, they call me their angel. When I go out to 4 Oaks to take them this food in the evening, they say, you're my angel. I say, no. I say, God is your angel because he's the one that sent me there. I'm not here for no accolades. I'm not here for no prestige or anything. I'm here to take care of those sick people. They need you all. They need me. They need somebody with a heart. I cry at night. I can't sleep at night. I think about a woman laying on the ground, having a seizure. All this just shaking right out her clothes. She was sick. I had to go kneel down, pray with her, bought her clothes. I do whatever I could do for the homeless because you know what? There are people just like you and me. There are people just like you and me. And my mama and my dad, they always taught me, you're just one paycheck away from homeless yourself. And God forbid that we get sick. Mr. Ernest had a stroke, and he lost his apartment. He wound up in the shelter. You don't know. These jobs, we thank God for our jobs, but we don't know what tomorrow holds. Come on, y'all. Let's get together and city to the inner city councilors here. Give us a couple of buildings. That's the thing. We just need more. We got so many buildings around here just sitting empty. Why can't we do something with these empty buildings? You know, and you ain't worried about nobody donating money because you got people like me that love the homeless that we would give what we got. I would buy many beds as I can buy, many tents as I can buy. That's the way we're going to get rid of this homeless situation.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more, and because I want to try to honor everybody's time and also have time for our closeout. So there's a gentleman here at the mic. Is he ready to speak?
Right, I can make it quick. Yes, my first thought would be each one can do something. Why don't we take people in our own private homes? Yes, why don't we take people in our own private homes? There was one city where the mayor came up with the ideal, and these are for people that are somewhat helpful. They can help themselves to some degree. He sold the houses to them for $1. and they were happy to get them, and they built the houses up. And also some of the military installations that closed down have barracks already set up for people to live in. We could use those kind of facilities for the homeless. Thank you.
So if everyone would just be as brief as possible, we can get in 3 or 4 more, so.
I will try my best. Good evening. My name is Rosalind Haysbert, and I'm the Vice President of the Homeowners Association at Wynwood Towers. We have quite a few neighbors here this evening. We are a compassionate community. We're located at River Road and 75th Street. But the city, we've heard a number of panelists, eloquent, also compassionate. However, the neighbors are still feeling unsafe. It is an unsafe scenario for the homeless as well as the neighbors to drive back and forth from River along 75th to Warwick. We have many seniors, we have many widows, and they feel threatened. Something has happened to increase the volume. And I want to submit that there's no lack of will amongst the individuals in this room. Many of us have turned in our names. We have experience in commercial real estate investing and are willing to put resources towards that. We've turned in our email addresses and our phone numbers. But what we haven't heard or had discussions on is what the city is prepared to do to make the community feel a little bit safer. I don't know what happened in the last couple of months, but something has changed. We're seeing congregants of up to 30 people on that sidewalk area after 4 Oaks closes. Now, I volunteer with 2 different organizations, and we have given time to 4 Oaks. 4 Oaks has armed guards there during the day. We couldn't even drop off clothes without the guard who was armed standing there inside. The neighbors, we're an armed carry state. I'm not suggesting people drive around with their sidearms on the seat. But what happens when someone's afraid? This is an accident waiting to happen. Concerned for the homeless, also want to speak for the neighbors. I don't understand why loitering signs, no loitering, can't be posted in a way that is reasonable. If this were Mary Point or James Landing or Port Warwick, some of us feel that the action would be a little bit faster. So I'm begging you, please contact those who have turned in the names and email addresses and phone numbers and help us, allow us to help bringing quick solutions to this problem so we don't have a powder keg continuing to build along 75th Street between River Road and Warwick. Thank you.
So unfortunately, what I have to do is, what I want you to do is please make sure that you have filled out a blue card. Secondly, there are a number of representatives here from the city that you can with as we close out. Am I the closeouter? Okay, hold on for a second. We will try to get the mic to you, but just for a couple minutes. Who has the mic? The mic is coming right behind you.
This is what we're gonna do. We'll have 2 more speakers, 1 and 2, 2 minutes each of them. After that, we're gonna have the city manager come up and do a closeout. After that, you have myself, you have the vice mayor, you have Councilman Long, you have probably 10 department heads on the outside, and we will answer questions afterwards, okay? 2 minutes per person, and then the city manager. Thank you, ma'am.
Can we do the 3 minutes like a city council?
I want to, but
I'm just kidding.
I also want to respect everyone who cleaned up and all this stuff.
Okay, well, while you're standing there, the solution is Mayor Jones and I call him Pastor White. These 2 persons have actually supported, Pastor White, actually supported my labor that God gave me to do. Every homeless person has talent. This says a conversation about homelessness. It should have been a conversation with homeless people. I started to walk up there, but if I did not have respect for Mayor Jones and Pastor White, I would have, because I believe that seat has a homeless person's name. If you want the solution to the problem, somebody said the solution is what? Within the problem. Homeless people should be filling this room right here. We should be talking. We should be testifying. However, I don't know what it's going to take, But we need to do America's Homeless Got Talent. We need to have a cook-off. We need to have, now that we have the two of you in the same room, you know, we got that chess challenge. It's going to be a draw. We can't have you win or him win. It has to be a draw, okay? The chess game. We all have talent. I play chess. I'm not going to tell you how good or bad I am. I will not play either one of you because I don't want to embarrass me. Long story short, God help us. CCNV in Washington, D.C. is a homeless-run shelter. Rico Harris is a confessed, what do you call that condition? Bipolar, okay, person who is addressing his issue. If he is bipolar and running a shelter that holds 1,350 people, then what's wrong with people who are mentally ill? The whole world is sick. The whole world is crazy. If we haven't been able to resolve this problem by now, something is wrong with all of us. Get this room filled with homeless people. Let us tell our story, okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
That's the way it is.
Thank you, ma'am.
2 minutes,
show.
2 minutes, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
We've got to be respectful of folks who have to clean up.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tanya Kelly, and I'm homeless also. Not because of my own doing, because my family members got fake power of attorney on me and took over my inheritance. My ex-boyfriend teamed up with my landlord, the Postal Service. My family members have politicians as friends. They friends with judges. That's how they were able to change the will and take my name off of it. My YouTube channel last year went to 146 million followers. Some of my videos have been seen over 800 million times, 600 million times. They hacked my AT&T account at my home phone, cell phone, cloned my phone, took over my service, purchased life insurance on me online with my information, and then they forgot a payment. So the lady, by them using my information, by them cloning my phone, because see, they had been redirecting, they took over my phone and redirecting my phone calls. When I call the FBI, it's them on the line. When I call the district attorney, it's them on the line. Every phone service that I have had since my AT&T account, they have hacked it and cloned my phone. This time, July the 23rd, I had called down to the probate court to get information on my properties and stuff. So they shut my phone down. Not only shut my phone down, they changed my provider inside my phone, okay? I took my phone to my provider. They gave me brand new SIM cards, everything to put in my phone and back. Whoever is government officials that did this, mind you. These people couldn't even call their corporate office trying to get help to get my service back online, okay? I've been trying, I done went down to the magistrate. They denied me. That was boom, okay? Acosta, when I went down there, Acosta was standing in back of the Puerto Rican, Mexican, I don't know what her name is because she was so scared. He had her sitting at the window taking my information, okay? He threatening her, okay, I'm about to give it to you, threatening her in the back. She was so scared, she didn't stamp my paperwork, sign it, or nothing. She was like, I'm so sorry, okay? There's got family members that's friends with Tina Vick, Michael Vick's mother, judges, lawyers. The trusted state attorney that was in charge of burying and Lenore Bigger's account is in a building in the city of Hampton. That little bridge that you go across to get the HU, that big building sitting right there is the people that's in charge that has something also to do with stealing my money, okay? They done made fake bank accounts and everything with my information. They done purchased properties, everything, in my name. And they got me homeless, they done blackballed me from working. They done blackballed me from finding somewhere to stay. They even paid my last landlord, because she told me about government, so I was working for the city of Newport, which I resigned in April of 22 because I was being harassed at work, okay? And my channel had also went viral to 146 million followers, and some of my videos have been seen 600 million, 800 million times. So that's why they hacked my AT&T account to take over my YouTube channel.
So Ms. Harris, I could connect with you after this, and we could talk about services.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming out, and I'm going to turn it over to our acting city manager, Al Archer.
Good evening, everyone. How is everybody today? I really want to take this opportunity to extend a couple very important thank yous. My first thank you is to you for coming out for taking this important part of your evening to have this civic engagement, this discussion, if you will, about a very, very pressing issue for our community. I think that you've heard from many of our council members who are here that they value this opportunity to hear your comments, to hear your ideas, to hear your questions. And it's not going to stop at this one opportunity for them to hear your concerns tonight. I am very pleased to announce what I think will be a next step and maybe a continuation of this conversation to really get down to resolving some of the challenging and very vexing issues of homelessness in the city of Newport News. But before I talk about that, in addition to thanking you once again for spending your evening here, being a part of this conversation, I want to thank our panel and I want to thank our moderator. If you could just join me in a round of applause for thanking them this evening. No one really gets excited about studies except people like me who work and toil in local government. And, you know, our world revolves around policies, policy guidance from our city council members, and most importantly, input from the citizens who live in the city of Newport News. So what I've been tasked to do is to prepare a request to conduct a comprehensive study for the purpose of providing a blueprint to assist the stakeholders, you all are the stakeholders, service providers, citizens, individuals who are homeless, in addressing the needs of the homeless population. So how are we going to do this? We are going to create a blueprint using a contractor to develop effective strategies, both short, medium, and long-term objectives, to assist us in addressing existing and emerging needs of the area's homeless population. Study will include the impact of residential and permanent housing solutions, including emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent housing. And I know a number of you who have put forward solutions have asked the question about how properties come into play given the city's zoning and the city's land use. So these are very important questions that guide where these activities can occur in the city of Newport News. So we have parameters around where such opportunities can grow and where they are most appropriately located to serve the community. So consideration will be given to locations, again, due to geography in the community, where there are pockets of need, and of course, zoning and land use. And our goal is not to do it alone. We know that our neighbors are also experiencing these same pressures, and the last thing that I would want to do is go down the road of missing a unique opportunity for support from our surrounding communities to be able to share in this burden and to be able to help us move toward solving some very, very challenging solutions. So I suspect that it won't just involve the city of Newport News, but it will include other localities as well. And there will be an opportunity once the process gets going, if you want to stay connected, if you want to be a part of other dialogues once this project is underway, we have your information because you left it on the comment card, or you checked the box that said, I want to be included in additional conversations in the future. So if you haven't given us that information or allowed us to know who everyone here is in the room, please make sure you leave that information with us before you go home this evening. There will be an after-action report that will be compiled. It will be posted online once it's completed for everybody to see and refer back to, so that we capture all the discussions that have occurred here this evening. And I also want to remind everyone that there is a resource table in the back of the room. It would be to my left, just beyond the exit here. It has a number of publications and pamphlets. And there's also, again, our moderator mentioned there's a QR code. And if you pick up the flyer with the QR code on it, you can take an image of it, and it will give you not only everything that we discussed tonight, but additional information that you may find helpful as well. So again, on behalf of our city council, our city administration, thank you again for your time. We really do appreciate all the value and all the comments that you've shared with us this evening. Thank you so much.